Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Wildcard Wednesday. I do 2 videos a week, a nice one on Sunday and a quick and dirty on Wednesday of just wildcard anything I want to do, all the other extra stuff. But I like to give you something nice to watch on Sunday, something that's really polished. So for today, I try to keep them really short, 3 to 5 minutes long. So I'm just going to go over some of the names of the components and then a quick little snippet, an excerpt, if you will, from one of my other videos. It's a 30 to 45 minute video that goes into more depth and detail. Click on Brian's Mobile 1 and then search videos for more information on like a pitman arm or an idler arm, tie rod, inner tie rod, outer tie rod, ball joint, etc. for the full description. But I'm going to give you just a little taste of it on this video. This is a 2002 Dodge Ram 1-ton, and this is a track bar. I'm about to take it off, but what it does is it runs from here all the way down to here. So it's connected to the axle at this union, at this bushing you see here, and then jump over, it runs up to the frame. One way to remove a track bar or a tie rod or something is to use a special wedge. The wedge separates it, drives it apart, and it's split down the middle so that you can get it out. This is often called a pickle fork. You put it in between and you whack it. When you whack it, stuff comes apart. The disadvantage to using this is it tears up the boot. That's why you only want to use it on something that you're going to throw away. The steering gearbox gets input from the steering shaft and then translates that through the pitman arm. Just get yourself a pitman arm puller. You can rent one from AutoZone. You go on to the pitman arm and slide it down between. If you got a Chevy or something with a big heavy bushing or something in there, you can shove it back up into the steering gearbox. Put a little dab of grease on the bottom of that. That helps too. I forgot to do that. To the inner tie rod. This has not been staged. I didn't use a pickle fork or anything on it beforehand. What you do is you take your hammer and you hit this part right here and it comes right out. It doesn't damage this at all. It just basically sends a shock through it. You can see that this is tapered here, and that shock just releases the taper. It works awesome. Through the adjusting sleeve to the tie rod in here, that's the right tie rod, it's really long. Then you got a drag link in the middle, and the drag link goes to the outer tie rod for the left hand side. And then you've got, of course, your ball joints, your lower ball joint and your upper ball joint. And then those go to your steering knuckle. So this is a 2003 GMC 3/4 ton. You can see it's got an outer tie rod end. It has an inner tie rod end in this boot. You can see this one's greasable. You can see the grease coming out both sides. See, here's the tool size. Pick out the size that I need. Slip that onto the inner tie rod. And then the end of this tool, you can see, has a corresponding bearing and shape that interfaces with that. So I take the tube and I thread it onto the end of the bad tie rod end, and you can see there's a little these little guys. It looks like an oil plug, and you just put it onto the end of it here. There we go. There's the grease zerk where you hook up your grease gun. So that's the inner tie rod end. And then inboard from that you have an idler arm, which acts like a pitman arm for the passenger side. It just basically keeps the slack out. And then you have a steering dampener. It's like a shock absorber to prevent your wheel from shaking back and forth. Whatever your caster doesn't take care of, this does. And then of course on this side you have what's kind of like a tie rod end on this end, and then it attaches to your steering gearbox, and this would be your pitman arm. Whatever delivers power from the steering gearbox, you can see the steering gearbox right here, is going to be your pitman arm. Now some of the pitman arms don't have a pivot out here, and some of them do. Now with this setup you have a control arm on the top and a control arm on the bottom. It's got the independent front suspension, or IFS. You've got a CV axle to accommodate that instead of a solid front axle. And then you have bushings that are inside the control arm. So you have a front upper control arm bushing, and you have a rear upper control arm bushing for the front control arm. If you have independent rear suspension, you'll have something similar back there. So on the top you have an upper ball joint, and then you have your steering knuckle that the CV axle goes through, and a lower ball joint. So lower control arm, lower ball joint, upper control arm, upper ball joint. You may have noticed this bar going across the front of the suspension. This is your sway bar or your stabilizer bar, and then the link that goes to your lower control arm, in this case, is your stabilizer end link, or sway bar repair kit is another thing they're sold as. But they've got a bushing at the top, and then they've got a bushing at the bottom. You can see this bushing at the bottom is bad. It's all the way worn through, that's why it's kicked way out to the right, and then this one's in the center. So this bar goes from this side all the way across to this side. So that's a sway bar bushing. It's just a rubber bushing that's slit on the one side, and so those can go bad and knock when you hit a bump, or your stabilizer end link can also knock at the end. The job of this part is to cause the vehicle to not sway and roll real hard. See, with this truck, you've got your dampening, you've got your lower control arm, upper control arm, your CV axle, all the same kind of stuff, but then you don't have anything to keep it from rolling. So looking from the back of the vehicle, if you were to turn the truck to the right real quick, it would weight to the left. It would list to the left like that. You don't want to be doing that every time you turn right on the freeway, so that's what that stabilizer link does, or that sway bar. It causes that to be level when you're going through the curves.